Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's 1 o'clock. I've got a signal from the video team in the back that they are recording, both live streaming as well as recording for the record. So if you want to stay out of view of the camera, please relocate yourself. If you want to be sure that you get on the screen, we've got the open forum microphone or any of those other opportunities that you want. Call the meeting to order, and note that we have a quorum. All the directors and officers are present. I'd like to appoint again John Felton to be the timekeeper, and as some of you will note, he's fashioned a lighting system now, just like they have at City Hall. So that, John, you want to press the button?
Okay.
There's a 3-minute sign. It's a blue light.
Yeah, blue light is 3 minutes. It goes out and the yellow goes on. You got 30 seconds. And at the end of your time, you got a red light. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
So we'll see if that's of any help in moving our meeting along expeditiously. Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as it was presented? Moved by Evelyn George, seconded by Herman. Adopted the agenda. So the next item is the members' open forum. Do any residents have comments they want to share with the board and community? If so, please come to the microphone. Check and see if that's on, Suzanne.
Is this on? No. Kathy, is that on? Is this on? Nope. What does it say? There it is. Which one
Is this on? Yes, it is. Good afternoon, board members. My name is Suzanne Cassell, 7577 Oak Creek Drive. As the year 2013 draws to an end, I wish to take this opportunity to thank you all for all of your hard work in the past year. I am also in support of your proposed projects. Unfortunately, this microphone has been used too many times just to express criticism, negative comments, and alleged lack of transparency, which couldn't be any farther from the truth. I attend the majority of the board meetings and the workshops. I have been doing so for the past 12 years. I probably have missed maybe 4 or 5 meetings in all. I am very well informed, and that's all I need. I come here every time to listen to board meetings, and I really get tired of all the negative comments. So I wish to take this opportunity again to thank you, to wish you and your family happy holidays, happy New Year. Thank you.
Greetings to you as well. Thank you, Suzanne.
Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Baroki. My name is Valerie Baroki. I'm a new resident of Oakmont and of Santa Rosa, and am gloriously happy here. On December 6th, we walked out of our front door and encountered ice on the sidewalk and on the driveway, drove along Oakmont Drive and saw paths down from the houses that are up above a strip of greenery, and the sidewalk frozen solid. And we were very concerned about residents who might open their front doors, walk out, and slip and fall and injure themselves. So we took the next hour trying to locate who to call to get some help for the situation. And one office would send us to another phone number, and back and forth. We finally by the way, we live in the Orchard, so this is a new area, and it seems to have a different system for reporting maintenance problems than other areas. So imagine our confusion and our desperation as we were trying to resolve this issue on behalf of Oakmont residents from one end to the other. So our idea is that now that we have grown this big and have different maintenance chunks and different little communities, I think there needs to be a communication hub for the whole of Oakmont that has at its disposal all of the phone numbers, all of the contact information to handle emergencies that come up or semi-emergencies, or find some other way to put the information down. We had really no idea where to turn, and started with the OVA office and then went on from there as we were sent. So I propose that the board seek a solution that, you know, and then another situation happened, the wild turkey flew into the electric lines and knocked power out. Well, we and our neighbors didn't have power for a while, had no idea what happened and no idea when that would be resolved. And rather than each one of us calling PG&E, which we didn't, we just decided to wait it out, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a central hub of communication where we can resolve issues? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. This is perhaps a subject that the board could consider asking our communications committee to help us address. Derek?
Just very briefly, can you hear me? Good. There is a system in place to handle these kinds of things, and if you are not a member of your local neighborhood Hope group, get a hold of Sue Hattendorf. She'd be happy to take your name and help you with that. We don't have a top-down communication system. It's almost impossible. We don't have the technology to do that. We have a very effective Hope group in place, which is used for all kinds of emergencies. So in the future, if you run into a problem like that, call your Hope leader, and they'll notify the people in the area to keep them out of harm's way, and that's the way the system works. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Ernie Erler. I live at 7372 Oakmont Drive, and the item I'm discussing is pickleball. There is a location of the proposed new pickleball court, which I understand costs approximately $70,000.
Ernie, would you speak directly into that mic, please?
Maybe they could turn up the volume some.
No.
Okay. And then close it. Anyways, a proposed site for the pickleball court would be the shuffleboard court area located just outside the Burger Center next to the maintenance building and adjacent to the commercial buildings on the east side of the parking lot. Concern has been raised about the noise element. It is reported that pickleball made of plastic, which is larger than standard tennis ball, and is hit by a racket larger than standard tennis racket, emits a noise described as a high-pitch ping. The noise factor from players and the pickleball court would tend to be intrusive to the employees of commercial buildings on the east side of the court and people frequenting the swimming pool located just yards away. Also, the noise factor would be of concern to events that are held at the Burger Center, which includes church services, movies on Sunday, both afternoon and evening, lifelong learning classes, concerts, luncheons, other social events held by numerous clubs, and also the OVA Board Meetings. I was informed that there was a court case involving a pickleball court that was built in close proximity to residential homes, resulting in a noise abatement lawsuit, which resulted in a court order to halt the use of pickleball activities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. As you may know, we have a committee working on this location question as well as construction costs. We'll be sure they get that message from you.
Hi, I'm Ed Sutter. I live on Woodley Way. And you know, sometimes I get the feeling that certain members of this board, like politicians, forget that they were put into their offices by people who live here, and they tend to mistake power for responsibility. So, you know, each one of you is no different nor better than each one of us. And I think it's incumbent upon the board, despite their own particular feelings, to listen to the vocal majority of residents who want or don't want certain things done in our community. So I don't have too much more to say, but I think listening to the residents is perhaps the most important thing that you board members can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Is this working? Thank you. Harriet Paul, 6347 Meadow Ridge Drive. 6347 Meadow Ridge Drive. Harriet Paul, I wanted to ask about, I mentioned John Felton's white paper addressing the proposed CBC. Mr. Felton said that only facts would be presented, no opinions. Well, unfortunately, there were lots of opinions, but I'm only going to talk about one. Mr. Felton ends, quote, "So these are the choices based on all available facts. Based upon this information, it seems clear that we have but one logical choice, and that would be to have the Hunter Group build OVA an office of our own, located on the lawn area described," end quote. Logical choice. Logic is a particular way of thinking about something, a system of reasoning, the path of reasoning used in any specific argument. There are many reasonable ways to think about the CBC, various modes of reasoning. I would like to suggest that the board does not have a monopoly on what is logical.
Thank you, Ed.
Greg Goodwin, Old Oak Lane. I consider myself a concerned Oakmont resident, fortunate to have an uncensored or edited open forum for 3 minutes to express my thoughts about the CBC project. Please take note that there is nothing personal in my following comments regarding credibility and trust. Before I address this audience with my main concern, I'm compelled to point out what I consider, and I put it mildly, poorly written statements that recently appeared online and also printed in the Oakmont News. I'm disappointed that some statements were omitted, shortened, and misleading. One Oakmont News article left out any mention of the board's proposed discussed restriping of the central parking lot, which was put on hold due to a complaint of non-compliance with Santa Rosa City ordinance. If the board and its advisors didn't know that proper approval was required to reconfigure the parking lot, to me, it reflects ignorance. On the other hand, if the board knew approval by planning and design was necessary and pushed ahead with without following proper procedures, then credibility and trust come into consideration. In a lengthy article, Oakmont News, December 15th, John Taylor is reported to have said, "It is clear that the board must move forward next month on a new building project because if we don't, we forfeit $500,000. I have here in my hand the relative agreement. If anyone can show me where we forfeit $500,000, please point it out to me in clear language. Again, credibility and trust. Another correspondence needed to be brought to light is the white paper addressing the proposed new central project. Stated in the first paragraph, there will be no reference to opinions or unsubstantiated claims. Later, Mr. Felton states regarding the beauty shop owned by the Berger Foundation, the foundation has not been particularly cooperative when contacted regarding our possible interest in building. but their true aim is to hold out until real estate market recovers to its previous levels. I would ask, do you have or can you produce any written documentation to substantiate this statement? If not, that is opinion, and again, I question credibility and trust. I'm running out of time, so quickly, my main point. Briefly, I would bring up the potential value of the Greensworth becoming a park in perpetuity. The 2009 report by the Trust for Public Land shows parkland as a percent of city land. The three high-density cities, New York, Washington, San Francisco, may I just finish one, had 19.4 and 18% dedicated to parkland. It is interesting to note that these cities are among the most valuable real estate properties in the United States. Thank you for extending my time.
Thank you for sharing each of your points.
I'm Joan Steiger. I live at 436 Oakbrook Lane. I would like everyone to hear this message very loudly and clearly. I have talked with 3 law firms and 3 attorneys that specialize in HOA law. One local attorney has informed me that she has received dozens and dozens of calls from angry, outraged, infuriated Oaklanders regarding the CBC building. Many of those calls, she said, are from sub-association board members. She is getting calls every day regarding this board. Do the words angry, outraged, and furious mean anything to any of you? Does it matter to any of you that you are creating incredible ill will among our community? Does it mean anything to learn that what you are doing is illegal? This board is not paying attention to the very people who elected them, and that is not acceptable. One of your responsibilities is to represent this entire community. The common area is not yours, it is all of ours. Putting a $1.3 million building on common area as a capital improvement has to be voted on by the membership of this community. This board is trying to railroad our entire community by getting itself mired deeper and deeper into a mess of its own making. Birding & Weil is one of the top HOA law firms in the Bay Area. Steve Weil is a partner in that firm, and he has stated this board cannot build this building without a vote of the members. Are you hearing that message? Can it be made any clearer to you? That you would ignore legal advice and Oaklanders and pursue an avenue that is so full of controversy is unpardonable. You need to know that legal avenues are being pursued. You need to understand this issue is becoming more volatile by the day. You need to recognize that you have taken the wrong steps all along the way on this building. This board has lost all credibility in this community by growing numbers of Oaklanders. You need to stop all plans for this CBC now, or you will face legal consequences. Thank you.
Susan Millar, 373 Greenfield Circle. Just a little history. I hope I can do it in 3 minutes. But those of you who remember our building, the Central Activity Center, may recall that we had quite a bit of difficulty, especially from a group of people who wanted to sue us. We had many signatures on petitions. We had nasty letters from lawyers' offices and a threat of suit and a call for a general election. I will say that there should be an understanding that a general election in Oakmont requires only a simple majority, but it must be a majority of every resident, or every household, I should say, in Oakmont. We have never had that many people even cast votes, never mind getting a simple majority. It isn't simple to get that simple majority. The lawsuit kind of disappeared. We continued with plans to build the CAC. The fitness center did get the lion's share of the space, and they got most of what they wanted. And the next group that got most of what they wanted was the card players, who were very vocal. I wonder if anyone really wants to claw back right now and go back to room B, room A and C, and see, and deal with what we had then. We had to charge ahead and do what we felt was right. We had the money to do it. In fact, our board has given an early retirement to the loan that we did take out on that building. I don't know where this anger is coming from unless it's money. I am confident that this board could work out the money problems. I believe that $500,000 from the Hunter Group, who are willing to build without profit a new office center, is not anything to be ignored. And I want you to pursue that and continue your investigation of what kind of a arrangement we could come to with the Hunter Group. I don't think we should pass it up. I also would like to quickly say that this is probably going to be the worst drought year that Sonoma County has faced since the 70s. And to preserve something that is so un-PC and so 1960s as our green sward, I don't understand that thinking. Thank you.
Yes, you guessed right. There's another poem coming. CBC, for you, indeed, not for me. We stand here before you, appealing once more. Perhaps you're not listening, you think we're a bore. I suggest don't dismiss us and simply ignore our first things first movement. We don't want a war. Instead of just ramming CBC down our throat, you've got everyone wondering why not have a vote. If you're so sure of winning, you'd avoid this big brawl and silence your critics once and for all. But I suspect that you're worried. You have reason for that. You had no idea this would cause such a spat. And that was the reason you have kept it so quiet. You thought that perhaps you could avoid a small riot. You tried to sneak by with that parking space deal to get it restriped without city appeal. As part of the work to get that property sealed, another example of motive concealed. For long you've been keeping us all in the dark, but now you're informed we just want to park. That CBC building, it just has to go. You know if we vote, that vote will be no. You sent out John Felton to write a white paper, another example of BOD paper. He waxes quite eloquent about facts and opinion. He sounds nothing less than a BOD minion. If we look at the plans, it does not belong. A ridiculous idea, it's been wrong all along. It's just an addition to fulfill your ambition, convert people to spark space despite our petition. And now that you know you have nothing to show, except the ill will you seem willing to grow, well, first things come first, and you'll regret this impasse. If you insist on this building, you can guess by... If you insist on this building where once there was grass. So let me conclude. We don't need a feud. Too many in Oakmont believe we've been screwed. So dispense with these plans. They're having birth pans. Avoid these harangues. It's easy to change us from foes into fans. Thank you. Before I conclude here, may I ask, apart from those who conceived this plan in the first place, are there any of those who are really in favor of this building? Show your hands, please. Thank you.
I'm Jim Sanner, and I live on Fairfield Drive. This is my first time to speak at a meeting. I usually don't like to. The reason I may seem a little nervous, I had a knee replacement about a month ago, and it's still pretty painful. First of all, my dad told me many years ago, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything. My dad was a very quiet man. Think of it over. The other one, I told my wife I was going to speak here today, and she's out shopping.
She says, don't say anything stupid. I says, I won't. She said, no, you misunderstood me. I said, don't say anything stupid. So now I'm going to go into the positive aspect. Times are changing. When Berger started Oakmont, he had control. There were 3 people. 3. I don't blame Berger for only having 3 people. He needed to have control of this community. It's not your fault of what's happened where we are now. 50 years have passed. Things have changed. This CBC Center may be a great thing. I'm personally opposed to it. Wrong location, too much money, and I think it was a railroad job. But that's my opinion. And I may be totally wrong. You must allow a vote. And here's why. I had another speech all figured out and I changed it. I went on the buzz, which I'm on there quite a bit, and Hugh Helm, who I don't know, said, you've got to have rational discussion. He was talking to Harriet. And he says, I don't want to listen to people who are pie in the sky and make up all these crazy things. He says, I want rational discussion. I agree with him 100%, and here's how it works. You have a discussion. First of all, you make your case. He's an attorney, he can tell you this. So you make your case, you present your arguments the best way that you can. Then you have a discussion. You are going to have some goofballs. Maybe you might call me one. Okay? After the discussion, you have a vote. If it's a minor item, the board votes. It's done. If it's a major item, like this CDC, the entire community must have a vote. Davis Sterling is not a surprise to any of these members of the board. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. Whether you give us a vote on this now, it's still going to come. You must change. 9 or 10 people cannot dictate to the entire community what you think is right. Okay? Enough the soapbox. Now, here's an idea. Newspaper. How could we get a straw vote just for fun? Because a vote would cost you $12,000 probably. Get a straw vote. Because maybe the board truly believes this is the right thing to do, and a lot of people are wrong. Here's what you do. This was an idea that Ritter gave me this idea. Excuse me. You take the newspaper, 1 month, you put a little thing in there, and you put your vote in there. And then, it's not accurate, I realize that, but they put their name, one name per household. You got all these to come back into OVA, and at least you have a straw vote. It's an idea. It ain't going to cost you any money. Another idea. I thought, when I got these, I said, well, if everybody's name is on these, then that would be easy too, because their name is there. You just send it back in. It's got your name. It's got
Can
your
you
vote.
finish up, please, Jim? Your time is up.
Okay. But I looked at mine, and it said current resident. Didn't have my name. So that wouldn't work. That was a bad joke. But anyway, I sure hope you people think very seriously about changing the things in Oakmont and giving people a right to vote on large ticket items.
Thank you, Jim.
My name is Nancy Caldwell at 316 Mountain Vista Court, and I'm sort of nitpicking, if you will, but it can be a pretty big nit. In looking at the agreement with the Hunter Group, it appears that they have the choice to build the building that we're talking about, or not, but it's up to them. And it appears that it's only after plans have been drawn that they get to decide, because they get to look at the plans and decide if they want to build it. That means that we have to spend a bunch of thousands of dollars preparing plans that they can then turn down. Is that correct?
We do not have to present construction drawings to them, Nancy. Simply the schematic design with an estimated cost structure based on an independent analysis is sufficient.
What's that liable to cost?
We've already paid.
So it wouldn't cost us anything more for them to see what we have so far.
That's correct. No, not so far. What we have ready to present to the community on on January 10th is what would be sufficient to present to the Hunter Group.
Interesting. One other comment. I'm not in favor of building the building, as you know, at this time in this location. It's possible that another building, smaller, in a different location would be fine. But I'm saying up front that I'm not in favor of what's planned now. But I also wanted to know why, as somebody else brought up, you stated, John, I think it was you, in some of the communications, that if the building's not built, that we would lose $500,000 if we don't do it, and that we have to do it now. John, you're shaking your head. Am I wrong? Did you not state that, John Taylor?
I think we're getting into a discussion area that's not appropriate for the open forum. I'll be glad to talk with you about it independently.
Okay, but I think a lot of people want to know, because that was in the written, that was in the written, it was in the written information, and you stated that we would lose the money if we don't build the building. We lose the impact fee money from the Hunter Group.
It's my opinion that if we do not offer them a construction alternative, we will be violating our contract. That's as simple as I can say.
It's your opinion?
See, well, this is why we needed to have a lot more discussion, so people could get correct information
Yes.
and really be allowed to express their opinions as well as just collect facts.
That's right.
I don't know how to answer your question any differently. Under the contract, we have the next step in the process, and that contract requires us to present them with a construction alternative.
Do you have any
Under those circumstances, that when we present it to them, they have 30 days to decide whether or not they want to accept that construction alternative.
Do you have any idea what their inclination is?
I do not.
Has anybody talked to them recently to see if they would perhaps switch to do an impact fee per house instead of a big chunk?
We have not, to my knowledge, had any discussions with them about it since, I think, March of this year.
Is there any desire or plans to do that?
We have a meeting, as you saw in the board's executive session statement, scheduled for this week to see what kind of time extension might be amenable to them. That's as far as I can go on it at this point.
In that, can you also suggest switching to impact per house instead of the big chunk up front?
We're plowing back into ground that they have made clear to us that they don't want to pursue.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
So the answer is no, apparently.
You know, I think when you get into negotiations, you can't tell what's going to come up. All I can tell you is where we stand right now.
Okay, thank you.
Donna Hopley, 6421 Mesa Oaks Place. I want to take you back, John, to the archaeologics meeting that we had with the schematics of both the CBC and the West Rec Center. After that meeting, I walked out with you and two of your board members, Evelyn George and Francis Diaz. At that time, you very happily told us that we had plenty of money for all these projects. You said it more than once. Then we have our budget come in at 50 cents, which apparently was approved by you. And then we heard from a resident who wanted to increase this dues increase. I think he said to $3, and we settled on $2.50. Well, to me, these monies barely pay for the increase in our accounting fees. Now, the last meeting that we had, I stood up and asked the board to hold off voting on the striping of the parking lot, which apparently didn't happen until the city came in and said that we had to do a review. I, for one, am very upset about wasted money that we're spending from our dues monies for projects that are not thought through. I'm sure that if people would go back to our last meeting or the meeting before, when you explained to everyone in this room that Goodwill Industry attendants would be losing their positions if we didn't find a place to move the attendance center in Oakmont. Well, that's not true, John, and you said it twice.
I'm sorry, I still can't hear what you're just saying.
I said that I recall you saying, and it is on tape, twice where you said Goodwill employees would lose their jobs if we didn't relocate the attended collection centers here in Oakmont. Well, that's not true and it's not believable. So how are we to believe all of the financial information we've been getting over the last couple months? I think we need to be clear and concise and get some hard figures, financial numbers. And I believe that Malcolm, knowing what's going on in our community, could come up with I got a yellow light, could come up with a solution for us, and I hope we are talking about it. Thank you.
Noah Lyons, Hillsdale Drive, and just have a brief comment I'd like to make. Sure, you know how I feel about a lot of these other topics. One of the documents that's attached to our packet today, it says over a 10-year very open process of committee hearings and board presentations. And I would like to suggest that while board meetings are generally open, we do meet executive session once in a while, our committee processes have not been as open as they could be. Not until recently, the last few years, committee meetings have gotten more open. Ad hoc committee meetings, where so many important decisions are made, are not noticed, and they are not, the public not invited, residents are not invited to those meetings. And I would like this board to consider revisiting the policy on ad hoc committee meetings. Right now, we have 3 very important ad hoc committees that are having meetings, and those meetings are not publicly noticed. And they will make important research, important preliminary recommendations to the board. And when it comes to the board, we hear, well, it was all done at the committee level. We weren't invited. That was really all I was going to address the board today, except that after the last couple of items, I would just like to clarify something, because not everybody has had the opportunity to read the Hunter agreement that we're talking about. But after there are some recitals that talk about who's who and what's what, it says, notwithstanding the obligation of the Hunter Group to pay the capital contributions required, the parties agree that they may substitute for that obligation the construction by Hunter Group. The wording is the parties may agree to substitute. May in this document is in bold and in italics. I can't see how anyone can interpret this to say we are required to give Hunter plans. It may be a good idea to take advantage of this agreement, but to say we're required to do it, I think, is a stretch. Thank you.
We can now close of the open forum, go on to the next item on our agenda, and that's our announcements and executive meeting summaries and the President's report. We have several announcements today, and I'd like to start off by asking Director Kaiser to talk about the upcoming New Year's Eve dance event, which the OVA jointly sponsors with the dance company.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I just want to emphasize once again that it's an OVA annual event that we have on New Year's Eve. I think those of you that have attended in the past realize it's such a good deal for the amount of money. I mean, you get a first-class meal. We have the dancing and everything until midnight. Steve Luther, a lot of you may have taken dance lessons from him. He'll be providing the entertainment. And so I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Right now we've got about a little over 100 people signed up, and we're looking to hopefully get about 60 or 70 more by the end of the week. So if you wanted to do it, please get your name in. There is an application in the Oakmont News, and if you, for some reason you can't find that, you can always call me, Jim Kaiser, at 843-3546, and I'll help you get tickets or whatever the case may be to do that. Yeah, you can also get together with a lot of your friends, maybe put together a table of 8 together. All right, but I think it's a good event sponsored by the OVA, and I look forward to you attending. And we need to have that by the end of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'd also now like to defer to Eleanor Brodnansky. She and Bob Adams have been the team working most strenuously on the Burger Plaza renovation, an activity that I know from their point of view has been dragging on way, way too long. But like other things that are presently underway, whether it's the East Rec improvements in the locker rooms or the West Recreation Center bocce courts that are in the process of being rehabbed, the plaza work is progressing ever so slowly, and Eleanor will tell us about it.
Bob Adams and I were asked to form a task force almost 2 years ago to facilitate the removal and replacement of the Burger Plaza cement and to find a landscape architect to draw the plans, along with an engineering firm who would do the drawings for the preliminary site work. Lori Cagwin, landscape architect, was hired, as was Ken Carr of Hogan Land Services. This has been a long process, but we finally have a City of Santa Rosa permit to proceed. After vetting 3 contractors, we chose Hardy Engineering as the best candidate. And last Tuesday, we had our first meeting of all parties involved. Those present were John Young, the project manager, Corey Hardy, the contractor, Ken Carr, the civil engineer, Lori Cagwin, the landscape architect, Cassie Turner, our manager, Mark Rogers, our maintenance manager, John Felton from the BOD, and Bob Adams and I. Also, Mr. Hardy brought his electrician and landscaper. This was a preliminary meeting for all to meet each other and ask questions. Mr. Hardy has said he hopes to start the demolition the first part of January. We will all be meeting every Wednesday as long as necessary for status reports on the project. And of course, next Wednesday is Christmas and the following Wednesday is New Year's Eve. New Year's Day, so I don't know if we're going to choose an alternate day or not. During construction, access to the burger will be on the north entrance, and overflow parking may need to be on the street because a lot of the equipment will be staged here. It will be noisy, so if you have a function that will be impacted, you may want to relocate to the east or the west. Either John Young, project manager, Bob Adams, or I will try to keep everyone informed as to the status of the project, either at a board of directors meeting or in the Oakmont News. The first news will be the various stages of the project and when they will most likely take place. They also will be posting a construction drawing at the CAC.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to just take a minute and say we appreciate what Eleanor has done. It was 4 years ago when she submitted her first drawing of the architecture, landscape architecture around this building. And she has the stick-to-itiveness in her personality, I guess, that is second to none.
Thank you, Brad. John Felton, do you have a status on the East Rec locker room?
The East Rec locker room is coming right along. We have all the materials in place as far as on site as far as piles concerned. Partitions, the new partitions have been ordered, replacing the old rusty ones that have been repainted a few times. Everything's on track, and we're doing our very best to meet our deadline.
I wanted to report that the 3 emergency telephone installations that were recommended earlier this year by the committee that looked into the AED equipment have now been completed. One is located in the vicinity of the lawn bowling area, so it will be accessible from outside. Another is located actually in the library itself rather than the library office. And the third one is located in the CAC lobby. And if we can keep them from being stolen, as they have twice before this year, we'll continue to have the one at the West Rec Center Cabana. It's amazing that a $10 telephone seems to be attractive to residents. We lost it twice this year at the West Rec Center. But we're pleased to have these three new locations in place. And then my final announcement is the remind everyone, if you haven't read it in the latest issue of the paper or seen it at the online site, that we will have a community meeting here on January 10th that I think is very important to all of us to understand how we might proceed with the proposed construction project that we've had so many comments about.
At what time?
6:30 in the evening, pardon. And you'll have to be entering, we hope, from this north side by that time. The next item that I have, unless I've forgotten some announcements, is for the secretary to report on our executive meeting, please.
Is that on now? Is that better? There are two executive committee meetings I'm going to report on. First was November 19th, at which all the board members were present, as well as for association. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Association manager Cassie Turner and myself, and the first item, three architectural members, Marianne Neufeld, Jean Whitridge, and Jim Husby. Anyhow, the first item had to do with an architectural violation. The architecture committee made a presentation and was excused, and then the decision was made to seek legal opinion regarding the matter. The next item was another relatively legal matter. It had to do with a matter involving a contract.
Can't hear you.
It involved a contract, that was in dispute, and the board is awaiting a report from his attorney on that matter. The third item had to do with an architectural violation with the residents, where there were possible safety and health concerns, but it turned out that there had been no formal complaints from neighbors. There was no way to verify the safety concerns, and so no action was taken. At the December 12th executive session meeting, all the board members were present except Jim Kaiser. Also present were Cassie Turner and myself. For the first item, also present was Pat Emmerdale and Bob Gidding. The first item is a contract matter, which I think has been reasonably well reported on in the online next door and as well as the Buzz, so I think we knew all about that. And the other item was a architectural matter, which there was a review of two legal decisions, opinions regarding a matter pending, and there was a decision, there was a decision at the end of that to notify the homeowners about the matter and see if further action was going to be taken. That's all.
Thank you, Hugh. That completes our item 4. We go to item 5 on the agenda, and that regards actions taken outside the board meeting, and that is listed there regarding the Burger parking lot because we deferred the restriping that has been mentioned during the open forum comments. I wanted to bring you all up to date on what transpired that led to that deferral. The alligatoring repairs were scheduled and done on Thursday and Friday, the 5th and the 6th of December, and we were pleased to have that kind of repair done to avoid having potholes develop in our parking lot. The second issue regarding restriping was deferred as a result of a resident's call on Wednesday, December 4th, questioning a permit violation. The office received a call from senior planner Noah Hausch, who in turn, whose call was in turn referred to me. He is the senior planner in the community development office of the city, and he called to ask what was being done out there. I explained to Noel that we had two projects underway, a roughly $18,000 project to correct an alligatoring situation, and prevent potholes in the lot, and a roughly $3,000 project to restripe the parking spaces from a 45-degree angle space and into a 60-degree angle space with a full 9-foot width on all of the parking spaces. I told him that the architectural firm designing it had been to the counter in the office and discussed the dimensions and details of that restriping, and were advised that no further permit action was intended. Was required. Secondly, after we got to the bidding stage for contractors, contractor wanting to be sure they were proceeding correctly also made the contact at the counter at the city and were told that a permit was not required. But NOAA advised me that inasmuch as a potential code violation complaint had been filed, it was now referred to a higher level of investigation, because when restriping of the time that we were planning to do comes along, it gives the city a chance to look at whether or not new lighting regulations or new landscaping regulations would be appropriate in connection with the restriping activity, and therefore, in his judgment, an application for design review would be required. I said, thank you. Sorry that we got off on the wrong foot. We'll have to consider at what point in time, if and how, we would proceed with the restriping. And so we terminated our agreement to have the restriping work done on the following Monday and Tuesday. And the board has not decided how or if to proceed in any way with this restriping that would have given us 22 additional full 9-foot width spaces because of the space accommodations you get when you go from a 45-degree to a 60-degree angle. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Before asking for a motion to adopt it, there is a correction on the board meeting minutes at item 9D. Tony Lakowitz's name is misspelled, and it should be appropriately corrected. Apologies, Tony. With that correction, do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar? Evelyn George moves to adopt the consent calendar. Herm has seconds. All in favor? The motion passes to adopt the consent calendar. May we have the treasurer's report, please, Chuck?
For the month of November, we had revenue of $143,000 with expenses of $171,000, which left us with a deficit of $28,000 for the month. On a year-to-date basis, revenue was $1,846,000, which is 6% better than budget, and expenses were $1,731,000, which is 1% better than budget, leaving us with a surplus for the first 11 months of $116,000. The transfers to the funds are all equal to or better than budget, and the cash and investments in the various funds are operating fund, $497,000, asset replacement, $1,344,000, capital improvement, $1,362,000, and catastrophe, $100,000, leaving a total cash balance of $3.3 million. Any questions?
Thank you very much. We then have the manager's report. Board members, you find a copy of the manager's report in your packet, and I think everyone was given a copy of the report with the agenda. Are there items that you want to discuss in connection with the manager's report, Kathy? Any additional comments?
There's a couple. The first one is the park course issue. When we put it in the Oakmont newspaper, we asked for people's comments, and I didn't get any comments that said, please keep the park course. They ranged from the 5 that I have down here, but from clean it up, fix the handrails, which is a good suggestion, and we are doing that. The handrails that are down right now, we're getting a proposal to get them repaired as soon as possible. Another person suggested that they put another handrail on a steep embankment, so we're looking into that possibility. So they were all good emails, good suggestions and recommendations, and thank you for sending them to me. So my request to the board is, do you mind if the wood block for the park course are removed?
I think the objective has been accomplished. We've gotten the resident input. There was one objection to it in terms of a letter to the editor. Beyond that, for safety reasons, we needed both of it. Does it require a motion on the part of it?
No, I was just, can we just direct her to get it done?
Yeah.
Without objection, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Cassie. Any other comments? Cassie?
Yes, there was a paper submitted, a request or a petition, let's put the word a petition, from some homeowners who use the east swimming pool, and they wanted it to be open at 7 o'clock for their use instead of the usual time at 8. So I did a breakdown in order for the board to evaluate the pool usage at the east pool and the west pool. It's in your packet. It's on page 31. And my recommendation for that is I don't see any harm in having it open an hour earlier. It's cleaned, or they can the people who clean the pools can clean the other pools first and just reevaluate. There's no impact on them as far as that pool being open first. And then the other pool, the CAC pool, we were going to revisit that this month as far as keeping it open all year round. The only thing I can tell you is that there are a number of people who do use this pool. It is obviously used by the tally. It's still too early to let anybody know what the impact is on the utility usage. But since the east locker room isn't completed, I would think you would at least want to leave it open another month through January.
It's my impression that we have previously asked that the central pool be kept open through the work in progress.
Yes.
So it seems that January is in line with that. I wonder about making a permanent change at the east during this construction cycle, whether or not it might be appropriate to wait. I'm just looking for input from others. Yes?
Possibly I could further the comment that you desire, but I don't understand the form that we received. Is this the use of each of the pools?
What this is I broke it down to just the two pools because just the CAC and the ERC. And what it is it lists it from hour to hour, just in the early parts of the day up through noon, to tell you how many people use it at 8 o'clock, how many people use it at 9, and the count and the tally. So you saw how many people were using the pool during those hours.
Thank you very much.
For those of you in the audience who don't have this chart, as an example, at 7 o'clock in the morning at the central pool, the numbers on a daily basis range from 0 to as many as 4, generally speaking an average of about 2. And at the East Recreation Center, starting at 8 o'clock, the numbers generally run in the 3 and the 4 people range so far as activity. And so I think one of the questions that the board needs to consider is, are there any related costs for this smaller number of people using them at particular times? Do you have any comments?
After me.
No, that's exactly what I think we need to look at is, I think during our construction and the turmoil and the other, I think we need to keep everything open as much as we can now, but as far as long range change in hours, we need to look at the cost involved.
Excuse me.
Got a comment, please?
Just a moment, I'll get you my chart.
Do you have utility figures that show what the...
Not yet.
I think that's still to come.
Okay.
Mike?
It mentions that, you know, the card activate and that's how the numbers were calculated. But there are a few people that come into the fitness center, either work out or not, and go through the door into the swimming pool the back way. So there is going to be a slight increase, I don't know how many, not too many, in the numbers that you have here, if they were the numbers only activated by people going into the pool entry.
Thank you for the reminder. We sometimes forget there's a back door to the pool. So let's continue to look at it, leaving the central pool open at 7 and the east pool open at 8 for the months of December and January at least.
Then the other item I wanted to discuss is the Burger Center floor here. When Mark and I had a chance to inspect it, because there was an issue about part of it, it's starting to buckle and there are edges that are coming up, and the line dancing people were concerned about it being a hazard. We came over and looked at the floor and we saw that it is an issue and some thought should be given to having it being replaced. It's listed in the reserve study as being buckled. So there is a reserve study line item for that. And we would like a directive to Mark and I investigate replacing this floor. Underneath the floor is a layer of what I would call asbestos paste. It's been covered with a paste-like substance. Mark, if I'm not saying it correctly, let me know. However, you can't put another floor over that. So the bottom line of this is, in the reserve study, the floor replacement cost is listed at $23,500, but because of that material that's going to have to be scraped off and moved, I'm sure that wasn't figured into this line item. So that will be an additional cost. And also we were looking at, if we're going to be doing this floor, there's not too much life left in the rest of the carpeting in the Burger Center, so it probably makes sense to evaluate that at the same time.
I have a comment to make. Cassie, this,
Yes, it's on.
can you hear me?
Yes.
The report on the reserve study for this carpeting is incorrect. This carpeting is barely 3 years old. There was a problem perhaps that might have weighed into that report at one time when it had been difficult cleaning it. We now have a process in place now that works really well, so we can take that off the table. If you will look at it and examine and check with Mark and how it's being cleaned and how effective it is, I don't think we need to consider that at this time.
Okay. The only thing I'm thinking of is that if there is any damage when you start pulling up all of this tile work and the flooring around here, it might damage that carpet. I don't know. One step at a time, I guess.
I think that we have the number, and if it's available from the manufacturer, if there's any damage, you know, I think that we might be able to replace that as needed. But I'm thinking in terms of the entire, should not be affected.
The other item that I'd like to bring up, which just came up today actually, is we found out that there's a new building code requirement, or at least I wasn't aware of it, maybe you were aware of it, that there's a building code that's going into effect in, I think, June or July of this year. And what it is any building that is required any kind of a permit to do anything is going to be required to increase their energy efficiency by 30%. So I know that you were looking at replacing these windows in the Burger Center. So in 6 months, they would go from a double pane glass window requirement to a triple pane glass window requirement. So I'm suggesting that we might look at that now also. along with the door replacement.
Can we look to you and Mark to come up with specific recommendations?
Yes.
To, first of all, surface with the community, finance committee, as well as with
Right.
I have an additional comment.
Herb's next.
Question, have the, what do we call this
Insulation.
here?
Talking about the insulation in this area.
Yeah.
Yes, that also, I'm sorry,
Have we-
add that,
Okay.
same thing.
We haven't done that yet, or it's
No.
not in the plans anywhere.
Well, we should have it in the plan.
Yeah,
and-
because that's critical about heat loss, certainly.
Yeah, so we'll do all of that.
Yes, sir.
That's the same thing I was going to cover.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, regarding, Cassie, you were saying that that's if you want to remodel a building, or do we have to effectively retrofit all of our buildings?
Only if you're going to remodel.
Only if you're going to remodel.
Do we have a definition on what constitutes a remodel?
I would think.
That's like the striping issue in the Burger King.
That's true. I don't know for sure, don't quote me. But I would think that anything that you needed a permit for, because how we got into this discussion was with architects at Anderson Ware. And they advised us that, that we had best proceed with the project at the West Rec Center now, because in 6 months, everything was going to change.
Thank you. I'd like to bring to the attention of our audience another item in your report, and that has to do with the Oakmont Automotive request to the city of Santa Rosa for a dispensing station for propane. I believe our new owners of that property are making a gallant effort to bring it back to be a supportive facility as far as the community is concerned. And they have a pending hearing under a city permit to have a 500-gallon propane tank installed as opposed to the old one that used to be there. This is on Thursday at 10 o'clock in front of the zoning administrator in room 7 at the city hall. And any of you that are residents who can go and support what they're trying to do to upgrade that facility and make it a service point for our residents, I'm sure would be appreciated.
The other,
Is this Thursday?
Thursday this week.
10 o'clock.
one last item, quickie. It appears that the shades that were installed in the gym were installed in the wrong area, which at first thought, I thought, well, it's not a big deal. You take them off at this side and you put them on this side, but I didn't realize that the shades were custom. So we're not able at this point to find out what happened. The drapery people said they were directed to specifically take measurements for the windows that they took them for, and that they installed them where they were directed. So we can't find out who exactly gave them the directives. So we're going to have quotes for the other windows and shade replacements for those windows as well. We'll submit it to the finance committee.
Thank you. Any other questions on the manager report? Seeing none, let's go to the next item on the agenda, which has to do with additional reports beyond the regular committee.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Have we given Cassie and Mark the authorization to go ahead and take care of this floor?
What we've asked them to do is come up with specific recommendations that we'll take to the finance committee and then to the board.
All right, thank you.
Is that in agreement?
What I'm understanding then is we're going to have flooring people come in here. We will have asbestos, we'll have commercial people in here and give us quotes for the project, as well as insulation for the ceiling, as well as window replacements. Then we'll go to the finance committee.
Yes.
And then we'll bring it to the board.
Yes. We get it? Thank you.
And if you could, we could have each line item of the reserve study comparing what is in the reserve study now and what the total cost was. I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Under the heading of additional reports, we have a classification for the pickleball committee. Members of the board have a copy of 2 committee meeting minutes as they're progressing to identify appropriate location and size of that installation. Is there anything that any member of that committee wants to elaborate on at this time? Not seeing any.
I would have a comment. Sorry. The area of the picnic, beyond the West Rec, in the past years has been an area that has just been plagued with yellow jackets. And I don't know whether that's been resolved or not, but if it hasn't, it's something to be concerned with.
Thank you. For those of you in the audience, one of the locations that was being looked at, according to these minutes, has to do with any open space, and one of them being some portion of the picnic area at the West Recreation Center. That's not the only location, but Herm was just cautioning on the bug problem at that location.
The pickleball committee, a fast update was, we didn't think that area was viable because of the size of the area and the location of the trees. It's too shady and there would be constantly leaves falling on the court. So we're kind of ruling that out for the moment.
The second item B under item 9 is Bob Giddings giving us an interim report on what the Central Project Design Team has been working on for the past 6 months.
Thank you, John. Today I've been asked to give a report representing the Central Project Team, sometimes called the Detailed Design Team. I'm reporting on behalf of Pat Amadeo, Don Green, and Sam Hendrickson, who all were members of the same committee. The mission of the Central Project Team was to complete detailed design work of the proposed multi-purpose building to be located on the lawn area in front of the central pool. To accomplish its mission, the project team reviewed design details that sought input from the following: architectural firm Archeologic, its principal Mitch Connor. Pardon my pause. It's really uncomfortable. In addition to Archeologic, we interacted with landscape architect Corey Cagwin also. Needs assessments from OVA staff and manager, surrounding activities including the fitness club, central pool users, and ping pong players. Residents, Oakmont Garden considerations, the OVA Board of Directors, and PG&E. Since our appointment at the July Board of Directors meeting, we have as mentioned above, sought input regarding the proposed multi-purpose design, building, a site location, and integration of the new central transformer and the requisite switchgear. Regarding input from residents and surrounding activities, team member Don Green has collected and tallied 365 comments, questions, and suggestions from the comment box set up in the CAC lobby. 239, or 65% of the total comments, spoke directly about the proposed building. 43% of the total comments complained that the location would block light into the weight and stretch section of the fitness center and would block the view, such as it is. Due to these comments and petition signatures gathered in the fitness club, team members met with representatives of the fitness club board to gather input. Team members also met with representatives of the Grandparents Club, the swimming club, and pool users about the use and size of the greensward and the use of shade areas around the pool for ping pong and for shelter. Team members have attended Board of Director meetings to gather input from open forum comments and have received copies of the petitions signed by residents recommending a pause in the planning process. Additionally, each member has received further unsolicited input from Oakmont residents, users of multiple OVA facilities. All these elements of resident input have been influential and our team has worked on positive changes with our structural and landscape architects to be reflected in a revised proposal. Changes discussed and being worked out with the design professionals after gathering input include: move the entire CBC multipurpose building from less than 19 feet from the fitness center windows to more than 33 feet, which further opens the area between the CAC and the proposed building, capturing more daylight. It is a wider space than the patio between the fitness club and the computer learning center and the restroom walls on the north side of the CAC. Reduce the size of the large meeting room in the proposed building. Deleted the blank wall of the proposed new building facing the fitness club windows and replaced it with windows in the new proposed building. Expanded and greatly enhanced the entrance to the CBC facing the fitness club windows. It is intended to be much more of an attractive focal point. Relocated and enhanced the main entrance to the pool, placing it between the CAC and the new building. This allows improved swimmer access to central showers and lockers. It also moves pool users' traffic and noise away from the new Burger Plaza. Completely changed and enhanced the landscaping facing the fitness center windows to capture more daylight. Landscaping considerations were not a part of the initial schematic design, but it is an important element in the appearance of our central complex. So the ideas of the landscape architect who designed the new Burger Plaza have been incorporated in the team's work, as well as integrating the CAC's existing landscape design into the design of the proposed building. Our work has resulted in the multi-purpose building footprint using 40% of the green sward while leaving 60% as open space. Shade sunscreen fabric has been added to extend the roof overhang on the pool side to retain the long shade area that protects pool users, loungers, and ping pong players from the sun. We recommended similar fabric to be used on the other side of the pool at a corner from the new pool entrance. We look forward, along with the architect, to sharing drawings and photo simulations of all these improvements at the community meeting in January. On a personal note, I would like to add special thanks to President John Taylor, Vice President John Felton, Directors Herm Herman, Evelyn George, Fran Diaz, Herm Hess, Jim Kaiser, Treasurer Chuck Chernow, and Secretary Hugh Helm. Within their responsibilities, each has given a great deal of their personal time, life's knowledge, and commitment to examining many aspects of the proposed CBC, not to mention all the other aspects of OVA governance. The committee is sincerely grateful for your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment, if I may. Between now and when we make a final decision about where to locate the CBC, I would like us to take another look at what is available in the Hunter property, particularly Lot 38. It is 1 3/4 acres, and if we now see the grading that's going on over there, the front part is going to be like a retention basin for storm water. I do not think that lends it to being an attractive property for commercial development. I think if we were to go back to the Hunter group and ask them what would they accept for the price for that lot, all things considered, it may be something that may be within the realm of our budgeting. I think that it could be developed to be very nice, and it's a central location. It's not that far from the present office. And before we make a final decision, I think it's something we should seriously consider. By doing that, we could get a minimum of 3 appraisals of what is the value of that lot. And as long as they were within 5% of each other, that could be the average price. We could find out what the Hunter people are asking, and we could then negotiate based upon the real numbers that we had from the appraisal. Thank you.
I think it's important for us to have all these ideas out on the table. I'd only add one comment, and that is, when we looked at the other lot on the opposite side of the entry road,
36.
the problem was not the price of that property. The problem was the price the city will charge for infrastructure development of an undeveloped piece of property. And the price there was $1 million, just to do the sewer, water, drainage, and all the related aspects. Whether that holds true for the part that you're recommending remains to be seen, but it's worth looking at.
I think you're talking about lot 36, which is only 3/4 of an acre. And lot 37 is 1 3/4. And we'd need some additional area for parking space, and if we were going to build a building that met our needs for today but allowed for expansion, then that additional land could accommodate that.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Are you accepting comments from the board members regarding this project?
Board members are free to talk about all they want.
I have.
It's part of this interim report.
Pardon?
We've had an interim report as an agenda item. If you'd like to comment on it.
This is commenting on that interim report. Because on January 10th, where we're having this meeting, I think it's going to be imperative that all factors that have gone into making their decisions are pretty well spelled out. As many of you know, that I've been against the present CBC proposal for some time, but I should make it clear that my objections are not to the new office per se, but to the location proposed and to the need to step back and consider all alternatives. I could well be wrong as to my objections to the location, but I am not wrong as to the need to slow down the process. And we don't need applause. That just wastes time. And at an executive meeting, we did agree that we are going to make every effort to slow that process down. But I'd like to suggest a couple of approaches for that meeting on January 10th. First, the ad hoc CBC committee and/or the architect should be very clear on why some decisions were made that were made. Specifically, I think it would be helpful for our members to understand this entire process if we had answers to the following 6 questions. A decision was made not to consider the space in front of the CAC. There's 4,800 square feet there at that location, in front of the 2 wings of the CAC. The reason given was cost, but we need to know just how much would the use of that space increase the cost over the present proposed site. A decision was made for the present L-shaped, sort of elongated building. Usually, a square building is more economical as to cost. Why was a decision made for the longer L-shaped building? A decision was made to locate the office section of that building at the Berger end of that property, adjacent to the swimming pool, rather than the other end. Now, by the way, these may all be very valid decisions, but I think that the public needs to know the reasons behind these decisions. Why was that decision made as to the location of the office? What consideration was given in this whole process to the potential parking problems and access problems to the office when the parking lot may be full for a popular event? One of the alternative locations that was rejected was the beauty parlor building owned by the Berger Foundation. Again, a reason given was cost and difficulty in negotiating. Could we have the cost estimate used as a basis for this decision, and just who at the Berger Foundation was contacted and the details of that negotiation? Another alternative, and this follows up, Herm, with your suggestion, was one of the commercial lots in the meadows. Again, I understand this would be quite expensive to develop. It was a rough cost estimate. Those are the things that I think we should expect from the ad hoc CBC committee. However, this board has some definite responsibilities that we have overlooked. The second of my part of my proposal is that we as a board must be much clearer in describing the different funds that would be used for these different projects. And I'm talking about the difference between the asset replacement fund and the capital improvement fund. These are two separate funds that are financed differently and that can be used differently. I don't believe that we have adequately explained these differences to most of the people in the community. We should tell them how the revenue is generated for these funds, what they can and cannot be used for, and what is now scheduled or considered for the use of these funds. Because I really believe we've been remiss in not properly explaining this in the past. So these are some suggestions I'm making for our January 10th meeting that might be helpful in explaining the whole process to our members. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time with the details. Any other comments? We'll go on then, if we can.
I just want to say Bob Giddings' report is online, so people can read it.
Louder, please.
The report that Bob Giddings read is already on the Oakmont website, so people may read it.
Thank you. If you didn't hear, she is saying that Bob Giddings' report, interim report this afternoon, is posted on the website. The next item I have on the agenda is for new business, and it has to do with the annual contract renewal for maintenance of the association's heating and ventilating systems in our facilities. We have been contracting for several years with Johnson Controls. This year, as soon as Cassie Turner came on board and Mark Rogers became involved as our maintenance manager, I asked them to take a look at whether or not this could go out to bid to see if we were indeed contracting for the appropriate price for the necessary range of services. And they found two qualified bidders, Johnson Controls, who has been doing it, and the Matrix Company, also a local company. And I believe the manager has a report on that for us. And you have a packet starting on page 35 in your board manual. Cassie.
Green. I did a matrix evaluation of Johnson Controls versus a company called Matrix. Matrix is located in Concord. They do commercial office space. We found that these were the two largest companies that could meet our needs, and they also do equipment software upgrades that monitor our system. So Johnson Controls came in at $11,748 for an annual cost, and Matrix competitively bid at $8,578. The only plus side I could see with going with Matrix, although we did properly vet them, we're very comfortable if the board decides to accept the one-year agreement with them, is that for the software update, Johnson Controls, that is a separate agreement, and it's an additional agreement, and Matrix is going to come up in and upgrade our software system for no charge.
So your recommendation is that
We're recommending going with Matrix, and we'll save the association $3,170 a year.
questions from members of the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Not to beat a dead horse here or get too nitpicky, Cassie, but I believe, in fact, by you suggesting to go for us to go with Matrix, you're saving closer to $8,000 instead of $3,000. Because if I read your report correctly, Johnson, as you just said, does not provide software, and Matrix does, as included part of the price, correct?
No, we already have the software. So there's already controls in our system.
Yes, but you still got to do maintenance and update on it.
Right.
Right, that's going to be part of the contract
Yes.
with Matrix, but Johnson wanted another $4,000 a year in order to do that.
in order to completely upgrade the equipment.
That's right, that's what I'm saying. So in actuality, we're saving the association somewhere close to $7,000 or $8,000.
That's how I read it. Thank you.
I move the approval of the maintenance service agreement for controls to the matrix.
Been moved by Herm Herman. Is there a second? Herm has seconds it. John, you want to say something? No. Thank you. Everybody wants a second, money saving. Thank you. Any discussion? I don't see any comments. All in favor of the new contract with Matrix, say aye. Motion passes. Thank you. The second contract that we have has to do with the Oakmont News. There are minor changes as far as that's concerned, but would you tell us about it, please? Yes.
The Oakmont News publication, there hasn't been a contract renewal, official contract renewal since 1998. So we decided that it was time for a new contract, and basically it's the same contract. OVA receives $3,000 annually from CJM Production. There's no change in that fee. The paper continues to be published on or about the 15th of every month. The contract terms for 1 year with a written notice of 90-day termination. The old contract gave OVA 200 free copies to the OVA office. She wanted to give them 100 free copies. I said, let's split it, and can you please deliver 150 free copies to the office, each publication? She said, fine. The old contract stated the newspaper was not to exceed 32 pages, and the new contract says it's not to exceed 36 pages. So I'm recommending that you renew the contract.
My only question about it is, what governs the size of whether she prints 28 pages like the current edition, or 32 or 36?
It's both advertising and content.
So she has to sell enough advertising for us to get 36 pages?
Yes, and sometimes there's more content than normal from us.
I just like the idea of increasing it to 36 if possible, because we have had a couple of times when she has had up to 36 pages, and I felt it was a much better paper because of it.
I think so too, and I love the work that Marty and his news team do, relative to broadening the straight news in addition to the club reports and so forth. So anything we can do under this new contract to make use of additional pages, and we could get them to dedicate another page to use for their efforts, that would be wonderful. You got a comment, Al?
Sorry. First and 15th. Yes. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adopt the new to sign the new contract with CJM Productions for the Oakmont News? Moved by John Felton, seconded by Evan George. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you for that work, Cassie. And next we have the final contract. This is another annual renewal situation. I believe for landscaping with the Scandia contract, this is just the second year that we would have been adopting a full contract with them, and there are some changes. Do you want to go into your recommendation, please?
Well, we had Scandia combine their contracts, so the rec center, the bowling green, the Pythian entrance, and the medians were all included in the contract. That total monthly cost is $5,918. When this went out to bid, I believe it was last year, there were specific rate increases that were included, that were allowed, and so Scandia didn't come up with this number. This was a number that was in their contract that they could increase that amount. So the monthly maintenance cost would be $5,918. The weed eating at the west and east rec areas would be an additional $11,800 a year. That price is the same price as last year's. I have a notation here that Yvonne Horn has requested that the medium strip maintenance be cut from Scandia's maintenance proposal and rebid in 2014 because the medians are not OVA property. She would like Land Design, who is removing the median rosemary and doing the balance of the median landscape installation, to be allowed to bid. But when I spoke with them about this, they would prefer to have basically all or nothing. So they would like to have the opportunity to maybe bid out the entire contract next year, but they really weren't that much interested in just having the median maintenance.
I see no reason to separate out the median, because the medians are not OVA property. Well, they're not going to be OVA property next year.
No, they're not.
I don't.
I'd like to make one other observation. Even though this refers to an additional substantial sum for the weed eating that needs to be done in every spring, that really is not the whole story that people need to know. We have still another contract which involves a tractor doing furrowing work in the wide open spaces at the west where the weeds are plowed under as opposed to weed eating. And secondly, depending on what weather is like in the spring, this weed eating only accounts for the first cut, so to speak. There are times when we do it in order to improve the appearance and prevent any fire damage, but we also have to do it a second time because of growth that takes place. So this is just a basic contract as I see it. Do we have a, excuse me?
Yeah, I have a question. There's weed eating that goes on in the back of my property, which is OVA property, that just kind of goes all along where the park course is on that around. It's not the plowing kind of thing, it's actually weed eating. Is that included in this item too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I move that we go ahead and approve the contract.
Scanning contract. Do we have a second? Herman seconds it. Yes, Evan?
Discussion?
Discussion?
I'd like Cassie to go back and look at our contract that we had with Cagwin and Gord, which is in our files. It is the year before Scandia came on and replaced it. I'm just going along the rule of getting 3 bids, because with that additional $400, the total amount now is $75,800 for Scandia, if they add in that weed control. I think we have some competition or perhaps a better contract going back to Cagwin and Gord. So if we do Land Design, Cagwin and Gord, and Scandia, and compare those 3 and get those quotes all in line, we might find we'll have some savings.
There's a couple of issues with that. And one is that Scandia's contract is up January 1st. So I have no problem with that. But what I'm saying is this price increase would be $5,918, effective January 1st. So are you telling me that that you're not happy with their work? Is that what you're... I mean, do you always bid out? In other words, do you bid out your landscape maintenance contract every single year?
No, not necessarily. And if we really do have a good contractor, we generally would stay with them. I was liaison for Landscape Improvement Committee when the new contract for Scandia came into place for the first time. I didn't have a lot of input, you know, as a board, as a part of the board, I approved it. But I really did have some doubts as to whether our service was as satisfactory. Now, we have a different manager now. And I really would respect Mark's opinion as to whether we are so totally satisfied with Scandia's and that the total contract amount is appropriate for what we need. But we have nothing else to compare it to. So this is only my suggestion, that we seek, and you know, because these other companies have worked here, they know what the process is. It would be easy for them to give us a price before our deadline. You may get you could get even a commitment over help.
I'm going on vacation the week between Christmas and New Year's. I'm not gonna have enough time. But the other thing, keep in mind, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the Bowling Green Scandia has been doing for the last how many years? So that's kind of a set price. There's very few people who have the capabilities to maintain that bowling.
Well, that has been a bone of contention for me, quite frankly, because I feel that $18,000, $16,000 is the actual extension of that price. But let's come up a little higher because we posted it for not to exceed an $18,000. That seems excessive for that small area, always has been. And I don't know that we've really been able to do due diligence in trying to get some competition to come in and do the same work. And I realize we're coming down to the line here. And I will ask you this. Is our contract, Bowling Green is included in this amount?
Yes.
It's shown here as an item of $1375. It's the second item under number 1.
Okay, I had, it's $1375 a month, which totals out to $16,500 a year.
Right.
Maybe it would be prudent for us to break that out and just sign it, as an independent, subject to, we have options, do we not?
Sure, your options are, you do have to sign this contract. I'm sure they'll be happy to work on a month-to-month basis. If the board decides that they want to rebid this contract, that's what they need to decide.
Well, Mark's had some input on this, and I would respect what he has observed. But I think that, there just may be a little more research if we have enough time. And if we
You've got plenty of time. They'll work on a month-to-month basis. So you can have, we can take the next 4 or 5 months. My only concern is if you keep, not you, meaning you, if the association, you need to find one contractor that everyone is reasonably happy with and stick by that person for more than a year at a time, because the downtime of teaching, although we're going to have it bid with these other two that apparently know the property, is it takes too much to get them started, to know the property, to get in the rhythm, that kind of thing.
And I support what you're saying, and I agree. In fact, it was a surprise to me, quite frankly, that we did away with Tagwin and Nord in the first place. But I think the board approved and accepted the maintenance manager's recommendation. But there's a case here now, doing a little more due diligence, and that's all I'm recommending.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Understanding Evelyn's concern, I think we could ask the manager for a future revision to look at the lawn bowling issue and to look at multiple contractors. But we have a motion to adopt this contract as it's presented. So, all in favor?
Point of clarification. It's not this contract. There are two proposals, and Jim's motion is to approve both.
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I think you said we've got to adopt two.
There are two proposals, and Jim's motion is to approve both of them.
Yes.
Items 1 and 2 of the proposal, both proposals. Right.
So we have two proposals. The motion was to adopt a proposal for the monthly fee coverage of $5,918 and the weed eating at the west and east recreation areas for $11,800. This is with the Scandia Landscaping Company for the year 2014. All in favor? And opposed? Thank you. Motion passes with majority.
I would just like to suggest that we review the performance of Scandia for the next 9 months, so this can come before us you didn't have a chance this year.
Right.
To bring it up, in September or October.
Okay.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is really kind of three items put together, E, F, and G. Pardon me, D, E, and F. This has to do with reestablishing the Landscape Improvement Standing Committee. You will recall at the board's November workshop, I circulated 2 possible standing committee contracts, one for a landscape improvement committee, the second for a facility improvement committee. Following that meeting, I have had several conversations with representatives that were formerly on the Landscape Improvement Committee and worked with Eleanor Brodnansky and members that were meeting as a pickup group on landscape improvement interests of theirs to make some changes in what was distributed at the workshop on the 5th of November. So what you have in your packet today is that revised contract. It doesn't have any significant changes so far as detail, except to point out, for instance, in the structure of the committee, they will endeavor to have no less than 5 members, including the chair. The previous version had a maximum, and they would prefer not to have a maximum because they may have projects they want to work on with more. They also wanted to have some more flexibility to extend the term of committee members. If a committee member term would normally expire under these rules, but they're working on a particular project, they would like to have that flexibility to recommend that under terms of their charter. Have I forgotten anything else, Eleanor? And so what you have in front of you is a request under item 10D to adopt the new charter for a Landscape Improvement Standing Committee. As a second part of that recommendation, to appoint Eleanor Brodnansky as chairman of that reestablished Landscape Improvement Committee. And thirdly, to appoint Kathy Karstensen, Greg Goodwin, Yvonne Horn, Marianne Newfield, Joan Steiger, and Alan Scott as members of the reestablished committee. If you want to take them one at a time, we can do that. If you want to take them as a group, what's your pleasure about a motion?
I move all 3.
Herm Herman has moved the adoption of items D, E, and F as presented. Do we have a second? Herm has seconds it. Discussion. Question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is, because I don't know the past history of how this was done, let's say the Landscape Improvement Committee wanted to make improvements at the West Rec Center parking lot. There's some round oval planters there in the parking facility that need help. So if they decided they wanted an improvement on that, would they give me the directive to find landscaping people to bid on what they're going to be specifying? How does this work?
They're an advisory group to the board.
Okay.
They may ask your assistance or Mark's assistance as a designated representative of the staff to their committee meetings to assist them in doing the research that's associated with that. But anything that they feel they want to pursue has to result in a recommendation that has been examined and totally supported in accordance with the language of their charter on the people doing it, the dollars involved, and the timing and so forth, to the board.
May I chime in? Cassie does another procedure, and it's called Committee Procedures for Project Bids, where they would go out and do basically all the research and could indeed interview the contractors, make their selection, and following the, I'll give a copy of this to you, following those steps, one by one, and ultimately make the proposal for approval to finance and then ultimately to the board. You are not excluded, the manager is never excluded, particularly be a part of this process and be informed, and especially if you attend the meetings, you would know this, but that it would relieve you from that kind of responsibility and research. It would fall back on the committee, and they would take the initiative to follow through on their choices.
No others? Yes, John?
I have one other concern. It has to do with the authority of the committee. The it's spelled out that they're advisory to the board and that they do not make decisions, that the board makes the decisions. And the reason I bring that up is because it's possible to run into a situation where when the committee comes up with a project and they're watching it progress, there's a tendency to want to step in and directly involve themselves with the contractor as they're doing work as far as changes or preferences of things like this. And that can cause a problem. I think that it needs to be understood. I'm not quite sure how to put this in place, that those kinds of contacts with our contractors, such that are working on projects that fall under the auspices of the committee, go through either the office manager or the maintenance manager.
I think what we have to do, John, is be sure that we have in place the kind of instructions for someone managing a project that tells them exactly what their authority is and what their authority isn't. And that's not part of this particular committee step, but it is a standing policy as far as project coordination is concerned.
I have a question. Yeah. Doesn't the contract specify who the contract is in the event they need to talk about changes?
Yes. But that person that they talk to needs to understand the limits of their authority and responsibility. That's the issue John felt. We have a motion to adopt all three. All in favor? Motion passes.
Quick question, John. When are we doing the FIC?
As soon as we get some help. This won't happen because of the really energetic effort about residents who wanted to be part of this activity. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of liaisons, and based on your input at the last board meeting that it had to be an agenda item, today it is an agenda item. And for those in the community who don't have a copy, Herman will continue to be the liaison with the Architectural Committee. I will take on the responsibility with the Bus Committee. Evelyn George will have the responsibility of liaison with Communications Committee. Chuck Chenault, in his role as treasurer, as well as Finance Committee chairman, will fill that liaison role. I will take on the role of liaison to the new Landscape Improvement Committee. Herman Hess, liaison to the Long Range Planning Committee. Francis Diaz to the Oakmont Community Development Committee. John Felton to the Oakmont Emergency Preparedness Committee. And Jim Kaiser to the OVA and OGC task force. We put in a request to have the LOMA Board of Directors consider whether or not they would like to have some kind of liaison with the OVA board itself. And I don't have an answer to that question, so at a future meeting, that also could be an appointment. Pardon me?
This says board liaisons. Are
They are officers, not board of directors.
well, it said board liaison.
Uh,
That's what I'm asking.
I hadn't thought of it from that point of view. It's a good question. That's just the wording we've got on the agenda. I guess we could have left the word board off and just say president-appointed liaisons.
Liaisons do not have to be board members.
The liaisons aren't called for in our bylaws or in any of our operating procedures. They're simply a communication facility that the board historically has tried to follow. I appreciate the question. You know, sometimes you pick out words that are intended to communicate something and they don't come across that way. The final new business item we have is our insurance package renewal. Cassie, do you have comments on the Brown & Brown insurance package?
Yes. Basically, there was not enough time to bid out to other insurance brokerage firms this insurance package because it would probably take at least 3 months if we sent it out to bid. I started work in November, and so there wasn't enough time, but I will do that next year because I have 2 other large brokerage insurance companies that specialize specifically in homeowners association insurance that I would like to have bid out this package. But the Brown and Brown package that was submitted is a good one. The carriers that Brown and Brown propose are all A-rated carriers. Philadelphia, which is the major carrier they recommend for the commercial package, is a reputable carrier. I've used Philadelphia quite a bit as an insurance provider for other associations. The increase this year was offset by a reduction in the workers' comp policy because the modification rate was reduced from 124% to 82%. The reduction is based on payroll figures and losses for the 2010-2013 years. There is one insurance quote that you might want to consider saving $6,000 off the price of that policy, which is what Brown and Brown calls difference in conditions, or its earthquake insurance. The building's property under option 1 is valued at $12,435,113. The coverage price for that is $36,100. The likelihood of all the buildings and the properties being damaged to the point of being red tagged is unlikely in the event of an earthquake. If the coverage limit is reduced to $10 million instead of the $12,435,113, the policy price is reduced to $30,000. It's up to you.
A savings of $6,100.
Yes.
And is this a situation where we might consider the fact that we have a catastrophe fund offsetting some of that addition, that risk?
Yes and no. Your catastrophe fund is for that, but just the deductible for that would be about $600,000. So
Chuck, do you have any comments on that?
Well, we have been building the catastrophe fund for such an event, but we're so far short of even the deductible on the original plan that if the worst should happen, we don't have nearly enough to cover. But then, you know, that's also looking at the very worst.
Thank you. Herb?
This is, they do provide complete...
I don't think you're on.
Oh, sorry. They do provide complete for that, what is it, $10,000. That is replacement cost, though, up to the limit of the policy, correct?
what, $10,000? $10 million.
$10 billion.
No, it's only for $10 million worth of coverage.
Yeah.
So the building property is valued right now at $12,435,113. And they would only supply $10 million.
But we wouldn't, if we kept the lower, if we took the lower amount, we wouldn't automatically pay a co-insurance penalty, is my question.
No, you would not.
Any other?
Note that on our property, note that our property insurance limit for the fire, extended coverage, and so forth for the property, we're at $10,837,914 compared to $12,435,000, which is what we've been running with the earthquake. Where's that difference coming in, you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Mr. President, I suggest we go with the lower amount. I don't see any major hazard in, we're going to lose all of our buildings at once.
I have a further comment. Typically, areas that are prone to earthquake damage be those areas where the soil is pretty much liquefied, such as in the valleys, low areas. A lot of our Oakmont facilities are located in the hills where there's a much less chance of severe damage during an earthquake.
But we're talking about our recreation facilities now, not just the residences.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I am too.
So your feeling is that,
I think we're okay at going lower because most of our facilities are up in the higher country.
It's all, let's face it, it's all a crapshoot anyway.
do we have a motion?
I have a question.
You have a question?
On discussion, yeah. Well, there was a memo here, we're talking about purchasing terrorism coverage.
Right.
Because we have a loan, does our lender require that?
Well, the interesting thing is, the insurance broker, we were chatting and she said, your mortgage lender might require that. And so I did call them. I tracked them down and called them and they said, no, there is no requirement.
So that's fine.
May I have a motion to approve the staff's recommendation, supplemented by Herman's suggestion that we go with the lower policy coverage limit of $10 million on the earthquake component? Or if you don't like that one, give me another one. Evelyn George and Herb Hess moved that. Further discussion? All in favor? That passes. Thank you. And we have,
I have a question about the point of order. You went over the liaison appointment information without any motion to approve. You might want to do that.
if that's appropriate, I just thought that was a direction of the president, but I will be glad to.
Well, we'll put on it the next item.
Thank you. Can we back step just to make sure that we're doing the liaison safely? Can I have a motion to accept those appointments?
So moved.
Second by Herb Hess. All in favor? Thank you, Hugh. The final action that we have is item 11A, the West Facility Improvements. For members of the board, that mistakenly got put into the executive session, and that's a proposed contract with Weir Anderson about improvements at the West structure. So if you can take the section C out of your executive session material and move it to the unfinished business items. We tasked Cassie at our workshop in December to look into the West facility improvements, and we now have her report in terms of this Weir Anderson proposed contract. Can you take us through that, please?
Sure. Mark Rogers and myself and John Felton met with Roy Weir and another architect from Weir Anderson, and we went through the structural analysis that they supplied, and we also discussed the men and women's locker rooms, the remodeling of them. And we wanted to hire a firm that could do both, because one of the things that we're finding here is that there are too many consultants on each project, and if we can combine them, and if they have the qualifications to be combined, that we would prefer to do that. So Weir Anderson had a seismic architect, but he also had a regular architect on staff, and so we met and we went over the plans for the men and women's locker rooms, and also the seismic. They had already submitted a proposal for the seismic details and drawings. So what they came up with is a proposal for $26,000 that would do the seismic detailed drawings, but also what they requested is, or not requested, but they suggested that the stucco of the building be removed and replaced, because they felt that it would, in order for them to do the protruding design repair drawings, it would be the same amount cost-wise for them to sit there and do the drawing or design detail repair work on the entire envelope. Plus, there is new envelopes that are out now that they said if you want this building to last another 30 years, there's new products out there that are much superior to what was done prior. They also felt that all of the patches on the outside of the building, they said they could have contributed to what, when they were inspecting the components of the building and the wood in the building where they were open, there was a lot of rot and some of the places were rusting. And so they felt that the envelope needed to be replaced. So that's also in this proposal. So they have a $26,000 proposal to $26,500 proposal to do the design work and for both the structural deficiencies, the water envelope, the stucco work, and the men and women's bathroom remodel.
For those of you in the audience, what has come to light in this situation, according to this report, is that when the West Recreation Center was built and the stucco exterior was treated with the then top-rated material to prevent water intrusion through that stucco, it has been found that over time that doesn't turn out to be a good idea because it's so effective it doesn't let the structure breathe, as I read this material. And that results in moisture being retained, that if a different exterior treatment of the stucco were utilized, we could have the building breathe, and in the process of redoing that stucco exterior in that fashion, we could also do the seismic repair work that has been called for. And at the same time, we could do the long-sought repairs and upgrades to the men's and women's locker room. And as I understand it, the committee looking at this has provided this architectural firm, who's providing a proposal for $26,500, to use the work that we've already paid for from the AWT company as far as designing within the existing footprint, not an expanded footprint for that work. So that when you have design drawings and a permit from the city, you can do both the exterior work on this building that they say will extend the life significantly, and at the same time do the interior work as far as the men's and women's locker rooms is concerned. And so I think what we have before is a proposal to do the whole package of ideas.
Sounds great.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
It's been moved by Herm Hess that we engage the Weir Anderson firm for these two aspects of our West Rec improvement for $26,500. Is there a second? Seconded by Fran Diaz.
I think that's a step in the right direction. Maybe we can go progress.
Other discussion?
This does, when you're taking, they're removing, let me just get this clear, they're removing all the exterior stucco.
Yes.
They're doing the design work for removal of all the exterior
Design
stuff.
work to do all the exterior, which would allow us then to inspect all of the wall space.
First and second floor. And so
Right. One of their notes under their scope of services says, unless the full stucco removal approach is implemented, partial removal of the existing wall and ceiling finishes will be required to evaluate the existing roof connection. So it just makes sense to do the whole thing.
Jim?
No, I believe.
Evelyn, thank you.
I have one question. They have offered to go ahead and use the plans as they were accepted and approved by AWT, for which we had received a permit. I don't know if they've seen those plans or not.
Yes, and the permit has expired.
That I understand.
Yes, but that's the whole meeting, was over the plans and going into the locker room and looking at the plans versus what's in the
Well, I
locker.
think we will need to weigh in on the revision on those plans because they will not be the same. And they must be resubmitted with alterations,
Yes, they-
right?
Yes.
Okay, so if we make that part of this approval. I mean, if we approve this amount of money now to retain their services, we just need to qualify how much effort they would have to make going forward to revise the AWT plans that have been previously approved.
What they have on page 3 of 7 under 3.3 is they have revised drawing or prepare additional drawings if required as a result of design change or discovered condition. So I believe that answers.
I crash studied this afternoon, but I got it late.
Jim?
Thank you.
Yes, so let me make sure I get this right. Okay, they're not really going to do any kind of work, construction work. They're just going to do design work. They're going to do the actual seismic design work for the building. Then they're going to sit there and look at what AWT did and either upgrade or revise depending upon which way we want to go. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right now,
And I understand that that work is to bring it to the point that we could apply to the city for a permit.
correct. Okay, now, prior to that, they have to have all the stucco taken off the building so that they can sit there and do their work, right?
I understand that's not required.
Well, how are they going to sit there and make do their design work if they don't know what the extent of the damage is?
I don't.
They already had done an analysis and done a design. The scope of services lists the field recommendations. They will perform an initial site visit to review the existing condition and configuration of the structural elements, verify stucco conditions and wall penetrations, and confirm the locker room dimensions. And again, go back to unless a full stucco removal approach is implemented, partial removal of existing wall and ceiling finishes will be required to evaluate the existing roof connection.
So that's my point. So if we don't sit there and remove all the stucco, then they're going to have to go in there and selectively remove
Yes.
stucco in certain areas.
Yeah.
So that's my point. That needs to be done before they do their evaluation.
Well, part of their evaluation, yeah.
Well, no, part of their evaluation, but that's really before they start really getting into it, they have to have the stucco removed, either selectively or entirely, and they'll recommend that you do an entire stucco removal.
I'd like to,
So that should be done first.
Mark, would you please comment on this? He's much more expert than any of us in this room, and I'd like to get it right the first time.
Mark Rogers, Facility Maintenance Manager. No, we won't have to remove any of this stucco. What they're taking are typical seismic calculations of existing buildings, typical building construction envelope, which is from the exterior walls, and will apply it to our building. What they would do is after the stucco is removed, they would do another evaluation and then point out areas that they would want us to go ahead and concentrate on and or repair. So what they're looking at is instead of doing what they had proposed originally was to remove 3 feet, the bottom 3 feet of the building all the way around to access the attachment to the concrete foundation, remove the stucco, plywood, any repairs that we would need to make, we would do at that time, put it back together. They also proposed to go inside the second floor and remove drywall and roofing material to access the roof to wall connection. All of that work we can do from the outside without impacting the inside of our building at all, unless the locker room remodel.
Well, that's true, but when you get into the point, okay, I understand size, they don't need to really, they just look at the drawings and they sit there and that's what they work on. But if you're going to sit there and do an evaluation of your structure, all right, then you're going to have access to it, and you got to have the stucco removed.
They've already done it. They've already gone in there and done it, and part of.
Then why are they sitting there needing to do more?
Just as I explained, after we go in there and we remove the stucco, they'll come back and do a full evaluation of the building to say if there's nailing missing, if there's fold downs from the outside. We still have to remove plywood from the outside on the first floor to access what that connection point is to confirm them.
So what you're telling me then, okay, is they have to remove no stucco or anything like that. They can sit there and fulfill their full contractual obligation, right? And it'll be 100%. We don't have to go back home to have any more revisions.
No, I'm not saying that at all. In their contract, they have multiple site visits throughout. They're also in that to go ahead and make sure anything that they draw is complete, that they'll come out and do field evaluations of the work that's being done, and in their stipulation that if anything does need to change, they'll supply those drawings to us or the contractor for implementation. So it's a couple of different phases of work that they'll go through. What they're proposing, what's that?
This is phase one.
It's all rolled into one. How they have their contract broken out into multiple site visits to go ahead and evaluate the building in the different areas. Preliminary ones that they would do to go ahead and submit to the city so we can get a permit to start. So they're proposing complete set of drawings, permit ready to go to the city so we can do the project.
You know, I thought I understood, and now that Jim's asking these questions and you're answering, I'm more confused.
Sorry about that.
Let's go back for just a minute and maybe square away. I understood this to say, in order to really get 30 years or 40 years of new life out of this building,
Correct.
we've got to take off the existing exterior stucco and put on a new coating of stucco with a new kind of sealer so that we end up with a building that can breathe.
Yes.
But the other part of that I think Jim was trying to get at is, do we have to remove all that stucco in order for them to design what needs to be done?
No.
No. And what they have on the first page of their proposal speaks to this. It says, overall, when he's talking about the new envelope of the building, it says, overall, this approach offers an opportunity to properly access, observe, and repair any damaged structural components of the building envelope while replacing the existing failing patched-up stucco with a new stucco system that includes a new weather barrier system.
So the actual total removal of the stucco wouldn't occur until after we had a building permit that reflects the design changes that they're talking about.
Correct. Yes, for the locker. That's correct.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have other discussion?
One more question, if I may. At what point in their proposal, they also talk about that this would include a new weather barrier system?
Correct.
Okay. So if they are called upon to do the entire building with a new stucco, only then would it create that weather system, right?
That's correct.
So if they don't do it, we would be, lacking in protection?
We wouldn't have the latest technology in weatherproofing a stucco-clad building.
Have they given you an idea of cost?
They haven't, and that isn't something that they do. They are an engineering architectural firm, and they clearly have in their contract that they will not provide us with numbers for rebuild or that the general contractor would do. That would still have to go out and find the contractor.
So we'll have to go out to bid after we get their design work.
Correct. After we go through the permit process, so we have final drawings to give the contractor and a That's correct.
I noticed that their terms of service indicate we have to approve this, that it's good for just 30 days. But what indication did you get of how long it's going to take them to do this work?
The conversation that Cassie, myself, and John Felton were involved, we're looking at within about a 3-month window to get everything, all the drawings done, get them submitted to the city, and get them back ready for construction. About 90 days is the window we're looking at right now to have everything.
But it sounds to me like you just said that they were estimating in 90 days we could have a building permit based on what they do? Because the city's now taking 120 days all by themselves.
I think what they were talking to is the time frame they wanted to get it submitted, because they want to get in before this 6-month window when all of those energy requirements start.
Okay.
So time is of the essence to them.
Right, and again, with the scope of work of what goes into that building, it is on the minor side of a remodel. So the longer project, the ground-up building, or that longer time frame, this, in my opinion, would be a much shorter review process because we're using the existing footprint of the building.
Chuck,
Can I ask one more question? Because we use the word remodel when we are only doing restoration.
Absolutely.
So wouldn't the permitting process be a little easier with restoration?
That's my point I was just making. That's correct. We are replacing the exterior of the building for light. We're removing stucco, putting stucco back on. The modifications to the locker rooms are again, on the minor side of changes. So that was my point exactly. To move that through the city would be a quicker time frame than the 4 months that would be typical for a ground-up building.
I guess we'd hope that 2014 brings us more good luck in that time frame. Other questions? Call for the question. All in favor of proceeding this way to get our West project moving? Motion passes. Glad to take that forward step. Thank you for the prompt response, Cassie. As the manager mentioned during the course of this discussion, her contract calls for her to have a week's vacation starting Christmas Day and running through New Year's Day, so we'll have her absent during that time. But we come to the end of our meeting simply with the announcement that we have a couple of contract considerations in connection with services that are required at the during the Plaza project with Lori Cagwin, the landscape architect, and Hogan Land Services, the civil engineer. So we will be taking those up in the following executive session. Nothing further, meeting adjourned.